Alright guys, so today we're talking about Dead Island 2, and this is going to be a first impressions video. I've played the game for probably about 6-7 hours now. My headphones just died, that's the only reason I'm making this and not playing the game right now. And so there's going to be spoilers for like the first 5-6 hours in this, but for the most part there's not going to be anything too heavy in this. And so I'm going to go ahead and go through and give you guys, like I said, my first impressions. I don't know how long the game is. I could be 1% through, I could be 10% through, I have no idea, but I'm going to tell you what I think of the graphics, the gameplay, the way everything's handled, the delay between the original games and this game and all of that good stuff. But let's go ahead and break all that down. So I want to make it clear that this isn't a review. Like I said, I'm 7 hours in. If you want a review, that'll probably be out, again, depending on how long the game is, sometime within the next week, hopefully before Jedi Survivor comes out. But this is just my first thoughts in the first couple of hours of the game. So I want to start out by saying my previous experience with the first two games. So I played Dead Island 1 probably like 10 times all the way through. Dead Island Riptide I played for about 15 minutes and I was like, this sucks, and never touched it again. I think that the first Dead Island game works really well for when it came out, and then Dying Light comes out and is just takes everything that game does and does it 1,000 times better. The crafting, the blueprints, it has parkour in it, the story, the side quests, all of that good stuff is 1,000 times better in Dying Light. So then you have Dying Light 2, and now we have Dead Island 2. And so how do these all stack up? Well, Dead Island 2, you're running around picking up weapons, crafting weapons, whether you're putting shock on them, or fire, or impact, or poison, or whatever it may be, in order to fight through the zombies. You're crafting weapons, repairing them, and upgrading things, finding blueprints, discovering stuff in the world to slash through the zombies and progress through the story. That's basically what you're doing. Now, for the most part, the map is fairly linear. The first game was split into zones. You have kind of the main city where you start by the beach, and then you go to the actual inner city, you go to the swamps, you go to the jungles, and you go from zone to zone, not really being able to freely choose where you go in the zones, and for the most part, being linear. This game kind of follows the same thing. It's not as open as something like, let's say, Dying Light. Right? Dying Light has a lot of free space. You can go in any which direction you want as far as you want to go until you reach the end of the map or a region you haven't unlocked yet. Here, they're kind of zones instead of an open world. They're relatively small, but there's a lot of them, and for the most part, it's typically just a road with houses on either side and maybe like a point of interest here and there to break up just the row of houses, but for the most part, they're these small little zones. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing in any way, it's just something different from a lot of other open world style games. Now, the biggest improvement between this and every other zombie game, and really if you want to compare it to its only competitor, Dying Light, whereas Dying Light has the parkour that is down so hard in that game, this game has a better crafting system, has better weapons, and the gore in this game is elevated so much from the first one and even from Dying Light 1 that it's absolutely fantastic. And so what specifically am I talking about here? Well, if you look at Dying Light 1, really that's the most recent example you can use of this, other than something like Doom, but it's not the same style of game. Where you hit the enemies will have an impact as the damage shown on the enemies. But the difference here is that also happens, right? If you hit them in the head, they take head damage. The arms, their arms will come off, the legs will come off, blah, blah, blah. They did that back in Dead Island, the first game, 15 years ago, right? But with Dying Light, where it evolved was the specific spots. You could hit these body parts that weren't predetermined and get unique damage styles, right? So in the old days, it was head, legs, or arms. That was it. It was the same thing every single time. Then we evolved to kind of giving you this unique animation to where you can choose, okay, well, if I hit the legs this way, they go this way. If I hit the arms in this way, they get destroyed this way. The head goes like this, right? If you hit him in the shoulder, that gets destroyed. And the lower chest, that gets destroyed. But in this game, it's so much better. Everything I just said is true. But it's unique for each weapon to the entire body. If you use a blunt weapon, it's going to do more cracking and breaking damage, versus if you use a sharp weapon like you just saw, it's going to do a lot more slicing damage. You can use sharp weapons and put like holes through people's heads. It's absolutely the best damage model I've ever seen for a game. Now, aside from that, it's a zombie game, right? You run around, you get your baseball bat, your machete, your sword, your planks, all of that stuff. You have the runners, the walkers, the heavies, the brutes, the spitters, the suiciders, you know, your typical zombie stuff. Nothing really groundbreaking. The only thing they really do so far innovative in the zombie type is they have the ability to have effects not only on your weapons, which is not a new thing, but on the zombies. So if you're using a lightning sword, let's say, and you have a construction worker that was killed from electricity and that's how he became a zombie or whatever, and he has lightning on him, your lightning weapon will not do lightning damage to the zombie. If they're on fire, you have fire on your weapon, your fire weapon will not do fire damage to the zombie. You have to actually have multiple weapons of multiple subclasses in order to damage the different elemental types of zombies, which is cool. Then, instead of throwables like grenades and all of that stuff, they have these abilities which can be ninja stars, pipe bombs, some chemical goop that I got so far, electric throwing stars. Those are the ones I've come across so far. There's obviously more, but let me talk about the biggest negative with the game, in my opinion, so far. So, when you break down games now, inevitably you come to a skill tree, right? And Dying Light 1 and 2 use skill trees, but what Dead Island does different is characters. The first Dead Island game had unique characters. Now, I say unique, they weren't super dynamic, they didn't have the most incredible backstory or anything, but, and again, this is knowledge from 15 years ago. One character was good with guns. One character had really good melee combat. One character was really good with throwables, had all abilities tied to throwables, guns, damage, health, speed, all that stuff. And that's kind of done here. Like, that's what they're going for in this character selection. And I don't know if I'm just not far enough along to where it matters, but the individual character abilities that are each unique to each character don't feel impactful in any way. And the cards that you get, which is just used as skill tree slots, are not impactful in any way, in my opinion. Again, so far, stuff like, you know, a burst of energy when you use a med kit, slide tackling, other things, drop kick strength, stuff like that, that really you would use as like passive upgrades on a skill tree. There's nothing crazy in here. If you look at the first game, I remember you start out being able to use throwing knives as one of the characters, and then you can lock on to like 10 people at once, or as the brute guy, instead of being able to just swing, you could do a ground pound and then spin in a full circle and knock down everybody around you. There was a lot of unique abilities and options that you had for each character, and again, I might just not be there yet, but so far, there's not a lot of variety in the skill cards and between each character. So I feel like I've covered pretty much everything I need to for a first impressions video. If you like everything you see, if you like the other Dead Island games, you'll like this. It's an improvement in pretty much every way aside from the characters. If you like Dying Light and think the combat, if it was a little bit better and you removed the parkour, you'd still enjoy it, you'll like this. Really, for the most part, I'm not at a point yet where I could give this a score, right? It depends on the length of the game, because while the brutality system and all that stuff is cool, if the skills don't level up quickly and the weapons don't start getting more interesting relatively soon, and this continues on for another 10, 15, 20 hours, I will get bored of just hitting a zombie with a sword over and over and over and over again. So I'm hoping it changes and becomes a bit more dynamic, and so far it's been doing that at a decent pace. But before I go ahead and give the full review and give it a score, I want to go ahead and continue and play through the full game. But you guys let me know if you're playing the game, what you think of it, if you really like it. I've seen people having bugs and glitches, and I assume that's on PC. That's how PC kind of always is, unfortunately. This is all on a Series X, but I haven't had any problems so far, knock on wood, but that's just me. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you on the next one.